This film has been in the making for a while, and so it had to be documentary in this particular case. It's going to sound, kind of cliche, but I do feel like the forum chose me for this project. Or, Ivy and I were talking about this at the beginning before we started recording, how documentaries, if you pay attention and do what you're supposed to do as a writer, as a director, the film tells you what it needs to be.
Right.
When I first started this journey with Stacey Ann, she was one of 4 moms that we were following. The working title was Mothering in the Movement. And I was I knew I had an instinct, I had a feeling that I wanted to understand what I was witnessing, this pattern of seeing, moms in particular on the front lines of activations and protests and marches with their kids in tow. And I was like, what is that? Who are these kids going to be? Yeah. If this is their upbringing? I was very intrigued by that. And we were following 4 amazing mother activists. And then over the development period and over 6.5 years, it became this focus on Stacey Ann and her specific journey, yet her universal journey with her own mother and her own child. So, narrative has other things to offer. Obviously, your imagination has no limits with narrative as a form. But I just find with documentary, there's an urgency to the storytelling, and the fact that it requires this collaboration with somebody who has to trust you in ways that your crew. On a narrative set, you have to establish those relationships as well. It's very important. But you can still make a film and not really like your grip, or you can have relationships that are where you're working through that
Documentary
on set.
goes deep.
But documentary definitely goes deep, and you have to have. If you don't have that trust, between in this case with the protagonist, with the central focus of my film, it just wouldn't have been possible. Not to mention the trust I needed with her daughter, that relationship. Right. So, yeah, it's a very unique world, and I do feel like it needed to be a documentary. This particular iteration of the story of motherhood.
I love it.
For me.
How about you, Ivy? My documentary this time.
It's funny, I went to film school to do nothing but horror movies. Horror is like my main love. And when I was going to film school, I took this experimental documentary class with a woman named Talina Sanders, and it just kind of shifted my whole, I guess, brain about what horror really is. And we watched these 2 documentaries called The Act of Silence, or the Act of Killing and The Look of Silence. And they're 2 documentaries about a Philippine genocide that happened. And the films just shifted everything that I thought about horror, because it's real life horror. And me and my brother collabed on the first documentary in the country about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And that's kind of my shift into documentary. And the impact that little short had, I saw within our communities and just people around Montana specifically, and just knew that documentary was a tool to shed light on a silent genocide that is happening within our communities. And so it was just something that I just kind of gravitated towards and continued to do within my work. And I love narrative filmmaking. I'm slowly going back to that, but I think documentary is just a way to amplify communities and topics that are a whisper outside of the big whole of the world, I guess.
Yeah. Lots of impact. I've always loved documentary film as well. As a kid in high school, back in the crusty 80s, we didn't have like this. We didn't have this fabulous like tech-filled program because that's not what the school was about or whatever. We had a couple of camcorders like the JVC big boys with the VHS tape in it.
I mean, those are
like
good
the
though.
size of
Yeah,
your
those
face,
are cool.
you know?
Those are cool.
I mean, it was cool,
That's how
right?
we started out, just like the little
Right, this thing, right? And 2 VCRs.
Oh
And
my
you just
goodness.
had to
TV
work your-
VCRs.
Exactly. You had to work your magic. But I was so interested in making documentary film even then, even though my deep love is narrative. So I need to hear about your favorite directors because mine growing up, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg.
Oh wow.
Star Wars is like up. When I saw Star Wars, that was like
We actually, fun fact, we actually mixed the sound for Bring Them Home at Skywalker Ranch.
get out of town.
Oh wow.
was
So we got to see
bad.
this like little snippet of like best of like Star Wars at their actual like sound studio. The coolest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Listen,
They had like the statues there, and I'm just like sitting there, and I was like, "Can we do more?" But
Listen, just the documentary about the making of Star Wars and everything George Lucas is cool enough.
yeah,
You got two
if you go to
Free.
Skywalker,
Three
please
nerds.
please do. It's cool.
That's awesome.
I love it. All right, so let me hear about your favorite directors that make you say, I am needing to go to the theater, not just watch this on TV.
Okay, there's many, but two that come to mind is someone who's like a storyteller through and through and just creates stories that I think are just unique and very well done is Quentin Tarantino.
Okay.
And someone who adapts stories to the film artistry extremely well is David Fincher.
Okay.
And so Quentin Tarantino and David Fincher, I think those two
Those are the ones
filmmakers are like top notch for me. I collect movie posters, so I have like every poster of like each director. It's it goes deep for me.
Okay. I love it.
Kill Bill it's amazing.
It's a cult classic.
It's amazing.
It's a cult classic.
I mean, everything about that film is just, it's like, for him, at least for Quentin Tarantino, Kill Bill, Death Proof, and then David Fincher's like Zodiac and The Social Network. Top, like just work of arts.
Yeah, Social Network was deep. That was definitely deep.
Yeah. So
Okay.
those two. Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Lori?
And I love that those filmmakers have such a distinct signature. I think I didn't go to film school, and I sort of feel like as a teacher, I was, figuring things out alongside my students. But that's not to say I don't have my influences and my inspirations. I think about filmmakers who are able to shapeshift and speak using a lot of different tools and genres. And so, an obvious person is someone like Ava DuVernay, who has done narrative and documentary with
Amazing.
equal
Television and film.
Yeah,
Queen
like-
Sugar was probably
Right?
the most beautiful looking show I've ever seen on TV.
That versatility,
Yeah.
I can only hope. I mean, there's just so many reasons why she stands out for me. Picking up a camera later in life and just having something to say and saying it using all these modalities and it's beautiful. Yet there's, as I heard her say in a recent interview, there's a through line. There's something through all of these mediums and genres. And then someone who did something, who worked in a similar way, I would say, is a filmmaker, Toronto-based filmmaker named Charles Officer, who passed away at a young age of he was maybe 51 just this past winter. He also worked in documentary and narrative, and he did a beautiful documentary called Unarmed Verses with the National Film Board a few years ago, and worked on The Porter, which was a television series about the porters in Canada. And anyway, just for those reasons, those two filmmakers stand out for me because they They defy genre and they defy rules around age and yeah, there's a sensitivity and a beautiful way of approaching storytelling that stands out for me.
I want to challenge you. Thank you for both your answers. Yeah, three nerds up here because I'm all about a Star Wars situation.
When I said nerds, I was referring to you two.
You were not putting
No,
yourself
I wasn't putting myself in the Star Wars nerd. I know my lane.
I know my lane. Yes, my lane is all things outer space, sci-fi, I love all film, just about. But what would you say, one thing we don't often talk about, like if I'm having a conversation with a filmmaker, we don't often talk about comedy. Comedy is like the stepchild of filmmaking because it can either just be so lampoony that you're like, come on, why did you waste the film on this? Or it could just be completely brilliant. What's your take on comedy? And would you ever attempt to make one?
Oh my goodness, I think it's the hardest thing in the world.
Indigenous people use laughter as a tool to heal. And so comedy is just something we're known for, our laughter and our jokes and stuff. I think comedy is like a tool for a lot of things, and I think for me specifically it's healing. We joke in order for us to live in this world that really wasn't meant for us. It was meant for us, but there was a lot of there was genocide, there was boarding schools, there were all these tools in order for us to not thrive where we are now. And I think comedies I think one of the best, I'll just say right now, the best comedy in filmmaking is The Fifth Element, and I'll stand by that. I mean, I have a tattoo from it, and I'll stand by it. It's that film, comedy-wise, is if you see that, it's beautifully done, and it integrates all of these other genres. But I think comedy is it's a tool, and I think laughing and being happy in a moment is, it's a moment, but it's also really healing in a lot of ways. And I think comedy and laughter is a tool that needs to be implemented more. And and we use that and bring them home. We have all these serious moments of this genocide happened, we are suffering, we're trying to look for a way to heal. Let's put in a joke, and it kind of fits in a lot of ways. Growing up, we had all of these things happen and all of this, but yet our laughter is our medicine, we say. So
laughter is medicine. I love that. How about you, Lori?
I think comedy is just the flip side of it's how we represent truth. I think the funniest things that I find funniest are things that are you're sitting there going, that is so true, and you're laughing, in spite of yourself or in spite of humanity. So I think it's a beautiful and a really difficult. I'm a little intimidated by the idea of writing comedy, but if I'm sticking to telling the truth of a moment or the truth of someone else's story, like I was with A Mother Apart, then naturally there are going to be funny moments, there are going to be funny things. Particularly, working with a child, with Zuri, who's I met her when she was 5 and a half, and she's about to turn, she's 12, 11.
Wow.
She's going to be 12 soon.
But you started working with her when she was 5?
Yeah, I went, and was doing sort of visits, home visits, getting to know Stacey Ann in around 2017. I took a bus down to New York on my March break, my spring break. So out of the mouths of babes, there are moments in the film where you're just this child is speaking truth to her mother in this moment, and you laugh, but then you're also this is so poignant. I'd like to challenge myself to do that even more in documentary. The idea of sitting down though to set out to write that's right now beyond me. I think comedy writers are amazing.
get distribution, but it's a little difficult, but I think that we're gonna have it within the next year or so.
Okay. And would that be something you would be able to say release on YouTube? Would people
Yeah,
be able to see it?
probably online. It will probably most likely like a Netflix or Hulu or something
That would
like
be
that.
great.
So
That would be awesome if
Yeah.
you could do that. Awesome. How about you, Lori?
Yeah, so I've recently heard someone refer to this period that we're in as a docopolis, a documentary apocalypse in terms of like
Unless you're in true
sales.
crime.
Right? Yeah. I mean, it's tough. I don't even know how many sales there were out of Sundance this year. I know last year I think there might have been one. The point being, it can be tough. 0.
Yikes.
Yikes. We're lucky, very fortunate, and so grateful that A Mother Apart is a co-production between Oya Media Group in Toronto, headed up by Gaddy Conte George, who's here in Philly, and Alison Duke. It's a co-production between Oya and the National Film Board of Canada. And so the National Film Board of Canada and Oya, we are connected with CBC as our broadcaster.
Okay.
So after the fall-winter festival run, it will be available to Canadians on CBC because our film also screened on Saturday at 5 o'clock. And is not currently online because of the same. I mean, we're at festivals in the fall and winter, so there will definitely be a New York splash. Stacey Ann is she's a Brooklynite. She's, from Jamaica, but she's been in Brooklyn her whole adult life. So there'll be we'll make a lot of noise in New York in the near future. So look out for the documentary festivals that are
it's
up
cool
there.
though, because Canadian filmmaking is so robust compared to United States and the way of national distribution and all of
Yeah.
that.
There's a bit of more machinery.
Yeah, no,
behind it, yeah.
they're really invested in the arts, which is really cool.
That's awesome.
That's something that we were told to is look for Canadian distribution because our reservation borders Canada and Montana.
Okay.
And so but I think Canada's they're doing a lot of good work up there.
It's worth it,
Yeah.
I don't, are you a producer as well on yours? Okay, I was going to say, I mean, it would be worth, having these conversations with producers and sales agents and figuring out if there's a way to do a cross-border. That's definitely a relevant story.
See, another great thing at Black Star, you got the networking and the sharing of information.
100%.
Which is super cool. We're just about out of time. I want to give you both an opportunity to share with us your social media, how people can follow you and keep up with your journey. I'll start with Lauren.
Okay, you can follow me, Laurie Townsend, Laurie Townsend, TOWNSH. There's a silent H in there that people always forget. END, Laurie Townsend on Instagram, or I think it's Laurie.Townsend. You'll find me. Look for this face. And the same on X, formerly Twitter. On Instagram, or I think it's Laurie.Townsend. You'll find me. Look for this face. And the same on X, formerly Twitter, and other platforms. Just my name.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And A Mother Apart is also on Instagram. So if you want to know about future upcoming screenings, special event screenings, there's a whole impact movement that's happening with me and Stacey Ann. We kind of want to do a traveling road show and talk about motherhood and otherhood and the complexities of all of that. So we'll be keeping the A Mother Apart IG on Instagram movement that's happening with me and Stacey Ann. We kind of want to do a traveling road show and talk about motherhood and otherhood and the complexities of all of that. So we'll be keeping the A Mother Apart IG updated with that type of content.
Fantastic. And of course, Ivy.
Just want to say impact campaigns are amazing. That's cool that you guys are doing one with that.
We
Yeah.
definitely, that's the other thing. I mean, we failed to mention this, but when we're talking about documentary, that's a huge part of documentary filmmaking is the way that that film can live beyond the screening, behind the
screens.
festival, beyond the festivals, and really galvanize communities and conversation.
Fantastic.
Share
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah.
Ivy.
For me, just Ivy MacDonald. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and also if you really want to dive deep into like Bring Them Home, Thunderheart Media is Thunderheart Films is on Instagram and Facebook, and you'll see a lot of my dog on my Instagram. So, but I think it's cool to bring in like your actual life within like your filmmaking life. So my Instagram's very, very kind of all over the place, but it's
That's all right.
just who I am. So
I appreciate it. Ivy, Lori, thank you both so much
Thank
for
you.
joining me today. That's it for today's edition. Our film festival continues for the remainder of this day. If you'd like to get a pass to come to it in person, you can go to blackstarfest.org. Thanks to Panera Bread for the brunch today. Also, much love going out to my producers, Miss Kayla J., also to Nicholas Steptoe. Thank you to Andrew and the whole Black Star Film Festival team. Have a peaceful, positive, and productive day. We will see you next time.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you.